And Prabhupada took us to the Kumba Mela in Allahabad, 1971, February. Very, very cold. And Prabhupada had us do three things. And that is prasadam distribution, deity worship, and Harinam. There were hardly any books at that time. But there were some books, some book distribution. On the left is Madhavisa Prabhu. He was called the King of Kirtan. Emperor of Kirtan. Oh. Tamal Krishna Goswami, his wife in back of him, Madhuri, and regarding Nandan Prabhu in the way in the back, tall. I forget the other devotee. Achyutananda, just to Prabhupada's left, and Giriraj Das Brahmachari with a blanket on his head. And then Yamuna Devi, and then Hansadeva Prabhu. Every day this man would search out Prabhupada. When he found him, he'd start jumping up and down. Prabhupada liked him very much. And there's little Saraswati on Shamsundar Prabhu's shoulders. And she was a big hit in India. Prabhupada said she was a great preacher. She would go up to people and pull on their dhoti and sari and say, "Guess what?" And people would look down and say, "What?" And she would say, "Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and you should surrender to him." And then she'd dance with her arms raised on stage. So it was really wonderful. Sorry. I'm going the wrong way here. Let me go back. So Prabhupada stayed with us in a tent, although it was very, very cold. He could have stayed at the Gaudiya Math where he served for many years. Could have stayed in the hotel. But Prabhupada always wanted to stay with his devotees. And one day he took us by rickshaw to the Gaudiya Math, Sri Rupa Gaudiya Math. These are the deities there. Sri Mudha Devi. And then we went to Benares. Wherever Prabhupada went, he was honored. Sometimes we think that Prabhupada didn't do very much before he came to America. Wasn't so successful. But actually he was extremely successful in preaching to the upper class. When we went back to India, they all received us for programs in their homes. So Prabhupada, wanted to preach to the leaders. He did very effectively. This is I believe it was the festival of Rupa Goswami meeting Lord Chaitanya and being instructed in Benares. Jayapataka Swami on the lower left. Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu ki. And then Prabhupada wearing his Western cowboy shirt. And when Mataji made this shirt for him, and she was thinking, what kind of style should I make? And then she figured, well, Prabhupada's a cowboy. I'll just make a Western style shirt. And Prabhupada, very proudly wore it. This is probably the closest you'll get to Prabhupada. Often devotees ask, what was it like to be in front of Srila Prabhupada? My answer was that it was quite uncomfortable for me. I was always worried about disturbing him with the camera. But also, I can understand that he knew our minds and hearts very, very clearly. In fact, when I first met Prabhupada in Surat, he went through that magazine page by page. And he asked me, afterwards he asked me, I told him I'd like to stay with the party and travel. He said, so are you going to become a devotee? And I said, I don't think so, Prabhupada. But, and then he said, then you cannot stay. Very interesting. So they put me up that night. The next morning I got up, and nobody said anything, and Prabhupada didn't say anything. And I stayed for 2 months. So from that I could understand that Prabhupada saw that little spark, and he fanned that spark. So here we are at the famous Cross Maidan Pandal in Mumbai, and this is where quite a few devotees, I know of 3 devotees who met Prabhupada there. And one was that sadhu who came out of the Himalayas, and Prabhupada called him up on stage from the very back of the audience. And that's His Holiness Radhanath Swami. So Prabhupada knew his future. You probably couldn't even see him. I mean, look at the crowds. Maharaj says he was way in back. Another devotee was His Holiness Radhanath Swami. He first met him there at Prabhupada. And there's another devotee, not well known. His name is Yadubara Prabhu. He's from Canada. He was just traveling, seeing India. He happened to go to the festival. And he recalls that he couldn't understand what Prabhupada was saying during his lectures. He said one thing, sorry, gosh, what's happening? But one thing was clear, and that was the word surrender. And eventually he did. So the last night of the pandal, there was a marriage ceremony. This is Benares Prabhu. Bhagavan, yes, Bhagavan. Do you know his wife's name? They're still together. Anyway, that was a huge hit. This was in front of 20,000 people. And Prabhupada gave the lecture, and when he gave the lecture, he said, "This is the real United Nations." And everybody cheered. Haribo! 20,000 people cheering. Yeah. Subal Swami did the fire sacrifice. And there in the very back upper left, you can see that sadhu who came out of the Himalayas. It's not very clear, but he's got the long hair. You see? Yeah. That's His Holiness Radhanath Swami. Yeah. So there's proof. I mean, we don't need proof, but it's the only picture we have, I think, of him there. This again was taken from a still movie frame. There's a lot we can do with those. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.